Welcome to Lesson 8, Working with BOs. So in this lesson, we are going to see how the SDK allows you to manipulate BOs in code. And we just learned in the last lesson that data can be manipulated directly using the DTO and the entity. But you can still manipulate the data directly using a business object, similar to what we do often in config tools and scripting. The reason to actually, even in these Java classes, to use the BO is that sometimes for example, in a plugin, a BO plugin, the BO instance information is already given to you within the class. And therefore, as a result of that, it makes sense to use the BO information and update the data using the business object. Also, if you're accessing data in a CLOB, then it is much easier to use the business object than to go directly to the DTO, where you would have to update the whole of the XML. So it is still usable, and it's in good practice in many cases to use the business object to manipulate data, even in the SDK. So just show you the example of how you do that. In the top example, I'm reading the business object, and the first thing I do is I create a business object instance based around the business object. I have an entity called person entity, and I can call the method getBusinessObject, and then I returns for me through the create an instance of that business object, and then I'm setting the ID, the person ID, with the ID value that I have from the entity. And then I'm using a dispatcher, business object dispatcher read, to read the data. And then inside the person instance, you have the data. And you can actually access the data through that, through a getter. In the second example, we have an update a BO, where you're actually setting the BO and then finally running the dispatcher with a fast update. We're going to see examples like this, as I mentioned, in different types of plugins that we have created. Just to put this in context, you'll see actually this is pretty similar to what we have in config tools when we read a BO, where again we actually determine the business object. There we use a business service called determine BO. We declare the BO, we move in the primary key and then do invoke BO. So the invoke BO for read corresponds to the business object dispatcher read that we have in Java. Similarly as well, in config tools we have an invoke BA for fast update, which is again comparable to the dispatcher for fast update. So again, there are similarities between the two, and this is again another method that within the SDK that you can access the data, and sometimes a preferable way. Although if you want to update a specific data and you care about not needing to update everything on the BO and read too much data, it sometimes is still preferable to use the entity directly using a data transfer object.